Setting up your meeting.
It says it's live. It says that we're live.
Oh, it does?
Yep.
Hey, everybody, we're live.
Hi, everybody. So, David, I would close. I know we're just getting started, but I'm going to tell you this. I would close out the Facebook that opened up because they'll be at cross purposes.
Okay.
Um,
And then hold 1 second, okay? Hey, everybody, hold 1 second.
Okay,
See?
great. We are live, everybody. Hi, everybody. We are live on David Bedrick's page instead of my page because we were having some technical difficulties. My name is Lori Beth Goldman. For those of you who don't know me, I go by Lori Beth on Facebook. And for those of you who don't know me, I'll just give a little bit of an introduction. I have been a licensed psychotherapist for many years, specializing in working with children, teenagers, and their parents, as well as adults, and working with a whole range of issues, including eating disorders, body shame, anxiety, depression, all kinds of issues. And I'm also a psychospiritual mentor, and I work in this more in the online space with this work. And I work with women specifically who have been in the transformational self-development therapy space for a long time and who feel somewhat stuck in their healing process. And I work with women in this mentorship program to help them resolve lifelong developmental early attachment trauma, so that they can live lives that they love and stop feeling like an endless self-improvement project. So that's a little bit about me.
I
And
like that.
I offer, it's a very dynamic, customized program that where I'm really providing a lot of somatic, therapeutic, and relational and spiritual tools for living. So that's a bit about me for those of you who are in David's audience.
That sounds incredible, Lori.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And today the focus is going to be, I am interviewing David, and this is a show that I do weekly. It's usually on my page. It's called Exploring Genuine Transformation. And it's a show that's focused on answering the question from a lot of different vantage points, viewpoints of what is genuine transformation. And to give you a little hint, or who I have on the show, is that we're not actually, I'm interested in exploring transformation that comes from the inside out. That isn't about necessarily gaining mastery or getting what you want in life, mastery over your experience, but actually having more intimacy with self, with other, more freedom, more peace, more well-being. So I'm really excited to be interviewing David Bedrick, for those of you who don't know him and those of you who do. And we are going to be talking, I'm really excited about this topic today. We're gonna be diving into his most recent book that's about to come out, that is called You Can't Judge a Body by Its Cover. So we're going to be looking at hunger, body shame, and sexism. And so we'll dive into that. But before we do, I want to introduce David. So David is an attorney, educator, and a process worker, and a clinician. He's a very talented, gifted clinician working with clients. And for those of you who don't know what process work is, it is a therapeutic, I would call it a therapeutic technique that was started by Arnie Mindell, and is very much at the heart of David's work and the work around his book. And it focuses a lot on, he's going to be able to go way more into this than me, but I will give a little bit of an introduction. It focuses a lot on on looking at like what are these symptoms trying to express? Like what is it that, what are our dreams telling us? What are the imagery that we have, the somatic symptoms in the body, and all kinds of other symptoms like anxiety, depression. So it's a very empowering and humanizing approach that really, I think, is really at the heart of David's work. One of the things that I love about David's approach and his amazing writings, as well as, you know, all the other offerings that he has, is that when I think about you, David, I think about inclusivity of all of one's experience, both the internal and also the external, and really, you know, not denying any part of oneself. And it feels really, really important. And so that includes like, okay, like, you know, like, let's say in my case, like, you have a Jewish lineage. How is that playing out? How is that part of your experience? We can't erase that or devoid that. And that is also obviously true of the topic today. Like, okay, this person wants to lose weight, but they aren't able to. What is going on for them? What is their actual subjective experience? What is the body trying to communicate? So we're going to dive into that. I want to just say a couple more things about David. He founded the Santa Fe Institute for Shame-Based Studies, where he teaches. He's also on the faculty of process work, but I think that's relevant as well, because so much of what I see you writing about is really, I feel like you're an ally and an advocate for letting go of shame and really getting into the nitty gritty of it and helping people to move through that, move through something that is, you know, toxic and not helpful for any of us. And he's also the author of Talking Back to Dr. Phil, Alternatives to Mainstream Psychology, and Revisioning Activism, Bringing Depth, Dialogue, and Diversity to Individual and Social Change. So we're going to dive into your book that is about to come out, right? It's coming out in December. Is that
December
right?
1, it's publication date. Yep.
That's exciting. And I had the honor of actually, before we even knew we were going to do this interview, of writing a review of the book. So I have had a chance to look at it.
I know it. Thank you for that.
And so, yeah, so let's dive in. Is there anything else you want to say, David, just in kind of introduction, and then we can dive into the topic?
No, I'm already thinking about what you've said and things I would be inclined to say.
Great.
Should I jump in?
Well, actually, I'd love to ask, you know, so I'd love to frame our conversation, because
I like framing.
Yeah, I'd love to frame just one aspect of our conversation, and then we can dive into it, which is, and this is a question for you. I know you talk about this in the preface of your book, but you know, you've spent many years, you know, on this project, and you're a, you know, white man who is focusing on this topic that is very relevant to women and to sexism. So I'm curious if you could share a little bit about how you got into this work, and sort of how you position yourself, you know, as an ally for women. And obviously it doesn't only affect women, but it affects men differently. So
yes. I was teaching at a university for 8 years. I taught at night, and one of the classes I taught was critical thinking in a philosophy department. And I taught a bunch of psychology classes. And in that class, at the end of the class, I assigned people a paper. And then the paper they had to write could be on any topic they wanted, as long as they used the critical thinking methods and viewpoint. They could write about O.J. Simpson, the Iraq War, their big toe, but they had to think about it in a new way via the critical thinking methods. And then a number of women wrote about weight loss. Why can't I change my body? Maybe if we use critical thinking, I would understand something different. And because I taught that class a number of times a year for 8 years, then I noticed after a couple of years, 3 years, that that was a regular topic as opposed to all the others. And I thought, that's so interesting. I don't really know much about what's happening. So I asked a couple of women, could I do a kind of therapeutic interview with you, like a therapeutic session, only focused on that issue? Because I'm interested now in learning something that I don't know. And so I did that, and that got me more interested. So I put up a sheet of paper, said, anybody want to participate in a study on weight loss and what happens and why you can and why you can't and how you look at your body? And I made that open to everybody. It didn't have a gender associated with it. But initially 21 women signed up and no men.
Mm. Mm.
Now, this is probably 15 years ago. Now I can see it's much clearer why that would happen. And many people here would know why that would happen. The particular oppression, sexism that objectifies, injures a woman's body and view of herself is part of the difficulty. Men, I never met a man who is only totally okay with their body, by the way. So it's not just women, but then it has this unique aspect to it. I also learned, Lori, that I think if I went back and wanted to make that opening piece of paper that asked people to sign up differently, I might have framed it differently if I thought maybe men won't sign up for it. I just didn't have that kind of awareness at that point to say, how will I have to frame it? So I eventually said, okay, I told these 21 women, can I do a series of interviews with you on this issue and tape that and transcribe it? And in exchange for the counsel and advice and whatever you learn, you would allow me to use that in my writing and my teaching, as long as I don't use your particular name. And after that, over the years, I worked with lots of people, men and women, in groups, and then thought, maybe I have to write this book. I don't want to write this book. It's not mine. I'm a guy, and that's not even my main issue. Not that I love my body totally. There are definitely things I could point to. My belly's like this, I'm 65, I'm sagging more, I'm getting gray, I'm losing my hair, and whatever. And all those and all kinds of interesting things. And my pec muscles aren't as strong as I want them to be, so I can be a tough man, and all the good things that life has told me I'm supposed to be. But I thought, maybe I need to do this. Okay, if I need to do that, I wrote a number of articles in my first book and my second book, and I've written articles for Psychology Today. And I thought, if I have to write a book, maybe I should make sure there's more diversity. Maybe I need more women of color. So I started adding interviews in this particular way so I can get a big enough base. And then I put it away about 10, 11 years ago. I thought, I don't want to do this. This is not mine. Why do I have to do this? But it wouldn't let me go. You know how sometimes that happens? Something like it doesn't let you go. And then about 3 years ago, I was sitting around complaining. My partner, Lisa, was there. I was like, why is this thing still bothering me? I know what it takes for me to do a book. It'll take me years because I'm an edit and re-edit and criticize and rip apart and reconstruct for years. Do I really want to go through that same process for this particular topic? And I felt, darn, I might have to. And then Lisa did this amazing thing. She took all of my notes and all the transcripts, because I read research. I read everything I can get my hands on, like hundreds of studies, literally. Every book I can get my hands on. I had 600-700 pages of notes. She printed them all out and put them in a binder and put them on my desk.
Wow.
And that was my book. Can you follow? It was a mess. It needed 2.5 years but it was now a reality. It was a manifested thing. And I was like, damn, I think I have to do it. Yeah. So that's how it got started.
So you've actually done like you've done several, I mean, there's 17 stories in your book that you chose, but
Yes.
sounds like you've worked clinically and sort of done this research with many, many more women.
Hundreds over time,
Okay.
in groups,
Wow.
individually.
Wow.
Yeah, enough so that I developed a format for what I think I need to, how to approach it, and what areas to make sure I go into.
Well, I'd love to dive into that. And I also just want to say that I loved hearing that story. And obviously it's like there's a personal aspect to it. And that, you know, as a woman, right, like having a man be I mean, having a man be interested in understanding a woman's experience and being an ally in that way feels really, really supportive. And I could also see for the women that you work with, right? Like there's this internalization from women of like a male gaze, right? So I could also see that there would be something really powerful in you working with all of these women and also then writing this book, right? That's sort of saying, I'm challenging this internalization. I'm taking a stand with you, you know, besides you, that this is not okay. And obviously we'll get into more of the details of your work, but
it's an important thing because I have to say, because I'm awake enough, not fully, but awake enough that for some women it won't be right for me to help them or to read a man's book. I say yes to that. I really do. If a woman says, I don't think I'd want to read a man's view, I would say don't. I'm not just trying to be nice, because if not that I could affect that person, but let's say I said, you have to, and let me convince you why I'm the right person. And if I could override their own hesitation, maybe there's a lot of, most women I can't because they're too empowered, but let's say I could override them and they would say, oh yeah, maybe I should do that. I've already created a damage, you see. They're already now given up their self-understanding, experience, intuition for mine as a man, not as David in particular, as a man. And that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
So that would be a big mistake for me.
Yeah, that's so important. I love that I love that that's your, obviously, I know that that's your way of being. And I love that you're naming that, right? Because it's true. It's that in itself is empowering. It's like, okay, I wrote this book. I've done all this research. My approach may be perfect for you and it may not. And I completely respect that. And sort of respect what you as a woman need around, you know, I'm saying one individual woman, but really whoever said woman who comes to you or who chooses to read the book or doesn't choose to read the book.
I want to say one more thing about that. I hadn't realized this until some months ago, because it was very vulnerable for me to realize and then think of, I have to say that, but then I realized I had to. It's not my book. I really mean that. It's 17 women's books. I tell their story, and I have a certain skill set to access that story. But it's not my story, and the intelligence in it is what those women taught me. It's not that one that I had that I put into the scene. I'm not just trying to be overly humble. It's really important to me to say that, because
I mean, that was my experience. That was my personal experience in reading the book, that it really felt like it was coming from the voices of the women that were, you know, that they were teaching you. So you're humbling yourself enough to say, even now the project started, right? I'm learning. I don't know. Why is this phenomenon going on, right? Like, why is this happening? What is this about? What is this about? How does this have to do with sexism? How does it have to do with, you know, what women kind of go through and internalize and what they learn? So do you, I'd love for you, if you want to dive a bit into, I guess what you said before, the approach, you know, sort of what you have seen in your research, what you've kind of learned from, I mean, that's a big question, I guess we could say, but what you've learned from your research, both about how this issue kind of forms, we could say, right? And sort of how it lives inside of, it's different for every woman, but you know, how it lives inside of sort of, we could say, the female consciousness, or, you know, the conditioning, women's conditioning, we could say, girls and women's conditioning.
That's a great way to say it, the conditioning. There's different areas of the different dimensions or areas that I have learnings. There's not like hundreds of them, but I can categorize them as essential learnings. But one of the learnings is a really important one, and it has to do with why these traditional programs, weight loss type programs, don't work. Why they don't work. Because the research says 5% of women sustainably change their body size, shape, and weight after 1 year. 50% get heavier, regardless of the program.
Mm.
I don't care what diet you're on, what exercise you're on, whether it's laying on of hands, whether it's Weight Watchers, whether it's whatever. It doesn't matter. 5% succeed, 50% are heavier, 45% don't have any change. What is happening? Inside of most people, most of the women, and all the women in my studies, there's something that says, I should lose weight. I should make my body different. I should look better. One part of that could be, let's call that healthy. I really want to feel better. I want my body to relax. I want to be a healthier human being physically, etc. All kinds of good things. I want to feel better about myself. I really belong at a different weight. All those good things. One part of that is that more or less. Some women have that a little, some have a lot. But I haven't met a person who hasn't internalized the view, and I don't like the way I am. Or worse, right? A lens internal now that's been internalized says, look at you, ugh. And then has a whole bunch of disgusting things to say about how you look. How I look, right? Look at your belly, look at your arms. You shouldn't wear those clothes. You shouldn't go outside. Who's going to care about you? Who's going to love you? And on and on and on. And the more you hear those voices, the grosser they are. So now I have a voice. Let's imagine I'm that woman. I have a voice that not only says get healthy, but look at you, David. Look at how terrible, ugly, disgusting, unattractive, undisciplined, lazy, all those things that are inside of the head you are. And that motivates me to go to a diet program. And then it doesn't work. What happens? Then I think, I'm screwed up. I'm a failure. I'm no good. I'm doing it wrong. I'm still too lazy. I'm undisciplined. I derail myself. So the first thing I thought is, what is this derailing thing? If I took a non-shaming view would mean that I don't think something's wrong with you, but I think you're doing something intelligent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do I want to see that's intelligent? The not going along with the diet program, I should look at that as if it's intelligent and see what intelligence is in it. Otherwise, I go along with, yeah, it's true. You are a no good, lazy, undisciplined, etc. I say, what if that's intelligent? And I found out a lot about that in every person, but one woman story highlighted it so perfectly. And she said to me, I want to lose weight. My mother was heavy. My grandmother was heavy. You already hear like an intergenerational story, which I can't go into at the moment. And she says, it's every time I choose to go on a diet, I start eating more food. As soon as I make the decision,
Mm-hmm.
I said, what do you eat? And she said, chocolate. I make a decision to go on a diet and I go buy chocolate and I eat it. And then she laughs. I said, what's funny? She says, I don't even like chocolate. Now that's crazy, right? In any conventional sense, one, she's derailing her effort, and the other is she's eating something she doesn't like. What kind of intelligence could there be in eating something I don't like, which goes against the very thing I'm trying to do? You just don't even have to like it. So I set up a role play with her. I say, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be your diet program. You should not eat so much. You should eat lettuce and salads and drink more water and all these good things that she had planned. And I want you to argue that you're going to eat chocolate. Right? Why? I'm not thinking she should eat chocolate. I'm trying to find out what's happening. Fight for the chocolate. Why? Eating the chocolate is winning. Can you follow? In her story, it's winning. I could say, you shouldn't eat chocolate. Then I'm one more person telling her she shouldn't do what she's doing. And so I say to her, you should drink more water, eat salads, and not eat chocolate. And she says, I'm going to eat chocolate anyway. I said, why? You don't even like chocolate. She said, it doesn't matter whether I like it or not. I said, what do you mean he doesn't like it? She says, I just don't agree with you. I said, what do you mean you don't agree with me? She says, I won't do anything you tell me to do. Mm. Oh, I said, so I started telling her all kinds of things. Do this, do that. And she was like, no, no, no. And she got so excited to say no to you should be a better this. You should be a better listener. Don't you think you should go on a diet? No. And she's like ecstatic. She's glowing, telling me no, no, no. And I said, what's so good about saying no? She says, Lori, I never get to say no.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mm.
She sets up, I know people think this is crazy, but this is psychological understanding. She sets up the perfect program. She does something even that she doesn't want to do so that she can tell herself she should do something and say no. She practices saying no all day long by eating chocolate. Now, eventually it would be good for her to learn to say no in other situations, but that may take work because she says no to her boss, and she's a single mom, by the way, maybe she'll lose her job. So it's not quite as simple. And then she's got 2 kids she's single momming. She's not going to say no to them very much because the father's not around. He's not taking care of it. So she's trying to take care of them, et cetera, et cetera. And she has internalized sexism. I should say yes and be nice and friendly to people. So all these things are against her no. She creates a little world where she says, do something, no, do something, no, do something, no. It's not fully conscious, but her no is her power. Her no is her self-love.
That story is so touching. I just feel so touched by the work that I know that this is only one example, but to actually be curious about this is what she's doing. So what is this about for her? What is the importance for her, right? And to not bypass that. Like you said, to actually look for, there's some intelligence in this. And the intelligence is huge. That's where I think I feel like I have the chills. It just feels so huge, right? Because exactly what you just shared. She, for a variety of reasons, right? Like including internalized sexism that externalized sexism, and her family situation and all of these different factors, she's learned that it's not okay to say no. But some intelligent part of herself is like, this is where my power is. I need to say no. This doesn't work. This isn't working for me to just say yes to everything and to go along with this thing that isn't even something that is me. Right. So there's something that's just so beautiful about that.
Yeah. She said to me, Laurie, I asked her at the end of our time, it's in the chapter. I said, imagine you're the Zen master of no, and you're going to teach me the enlightenment of no, so that she can then connect with how important no is, because it's so important she'll abandon all of her plans. She'll do things she doesn't like, eat chocolate, just to say it. So it's a pretty big thing. And she said to me, without no, you don't exist.
Mm.
Now, can you imagine if I said to her, stop eating chocolate? I'm caricaturing.
Yeah.
Don't eat chocolate. What's wrong with you? Why don't you just get it together and be more disciplined? Then I'm ignoring something so important. It's her existence itself she's standing for.
Yeah.
But if you can't say no, you're not even a human being. You don't even exist. I'm like, that's a pretty important thing. I don't think I'm going to be able to, as you say, bypass that. I'm going to have to make an ally with her no. And she's not going to be able to develop the power, as people know here, to say no in all those situations in a week.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to take her a while. What can I do at my job? How free am I going to be? What are my finances? How do I stand up to my kids even though I feel bad that the father's not there? That's a lot of complex issues. She needs help. But her diet program, if she's on one, is going to be empowering herself around that no in different ways. How can she bring it out? How can she use that in different ways? How can she? Where is it too dangerous for her so far in her life? It's a tender, beautiful thing. It's a self-love project, a self-empowerment project.
Mm-hmm. And so with that, I'm curious, like, did you work with her ongoingly where you then were helping, like, how would you help somebody to continue to be able to, like in this case, say no in all of these areas? And then also how did that impact her relationship with her body, with her weight, with a program, or, yeah, with her desire potentially to lose weight?
We worked together for a little while, but for that period of time, she decided to let go of the weight loss efforts for that period of time, and she wanted to start working on her relationship with her children. Why? Because she did need more boundary with them, and she felt a little guilty about being that the father wasn't there. And she did need to say no to them in different ways about what she was willing to do. And she thought she could make a better relationship with them. So she started there. The work scene was a little bit hard for her because she was a sole income earner. Yeah, so we started there.
what's really, I love that because what it makes me think about, right, is that again, the focus, and this is how I think we're internal, like we learn as women. To me, the body and is for women. Um, it's the place where we are taught. It's like all the energy goes there, all the power goes there in basically trying to be a certain way, and then
Yeah.
it loses, it leaks out from the other areas of life. I'm not saying that exactly as I'm trying to, but it's a feels like it's a like in that example, right? It's like what was actually true for her is like, hey, I want to work on this thing with my children. Not that it's actually true, but it's like that it wasn't just about, it's not just about body and weight. And I think that the way that we learn, we internalize sort of, I have to be a certain weight, I have to look a certain way, this is what makes me powerful. It's actually a way that we lose our power, obviously, right? Because the emphasis comes on that, and then women are not actually moving towards what they want in their lives.
That's right.
They're putting all of their energy into that. So it's we could say, you know, it's a political, and it's a way of keeping women stuck and keeping women small, basically.
Yes. It's an amazing thing you're saying. The sexism, the culture, because of the focus, that patriarchal gaze, like you said it so well, on the women's body is so strong, then a lot of the difficulties and conflicts that a woman will then wrestle with will be internal to her body and her body size and shape. She's going to wrestle with that. How could you not be? Because the healthy part of you is going to have to say, screw you, I'm not going to conform. I'm going to do what's right for me, whether that's be thin or eat or whatever that is. But then that location, the body size and shape and eating then comes in as a location where that wrestle is happening.
Yeah.
You make me think of it. Yeah, go ahead. You make me think about a different story when you talk about being big and being small. There's another woman in the book, Vanessa, and Vanessa went into the military. She was in and out before I met her. She was thinking about, should I go become a fire person? She's thinking, why am I always pushing myself? You know, so we went through all these different stories about her. She was called chunky and too big and teased about that from a little girl. So she always had this, I'm too big. If only I could be a little bit smaller. She had that in her, regardless of her body size. It was implanted in her very young. That's not uncommon. So she had that in her. And yet some of her was not willing to get smaller. So she ends up becoming quite a strong, physically, mentally, emotionally woman. And she ends up going into the military. In the military, they did something called tape testing. You may remember this from the book. So they say to her, we take a measuring tape and we wrap it around different parts of your body, your chest, your hips, your butt, your belly. And if it's more than a certain number of inches or centimeters, wherever we're in, then you have to go to what she called fat camp, military fat camp. You have to lose weight. She was so strong. She could do everything that guys can do. She moved these tires. I don't know what they were. She described them. There were these truck tires. She could run. She can do all physically, she was able to do all the strength and speed tests. But the tape says her butt was too big, she says. So at night, she would take Preparation H. That's hemorrhoid cream. She wasn't the only woman who does this. And coat her hips and thighs and butt with this and wrap it in saran wrap and sleep like that, so that when they tape tested her, she would be smaller. Wow. Now think about that literally, oh my gosh, but think about that metaphorically in terms of your idea about get smaller, be smaller.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible. At one point, we were exploring what it would be like if she wasn't trying to be smaller. And then she was telling me how that she'd be like a bear. And I asked her, can I meet the bear? And she said, sure. And I said, I'm going to try to hold the bear back physically, you know, so she let me put her hands against my hands, you know, And she just pushed me into this wall like nothing, you know. She got shy. She was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry." I'm like, "Okay, you don't hurt me," but you know. And she's like, "Oh," I said, "You're pretty strong." And then she got very, "Am I being too much? Is this too much?" You know, that internal, "Am I too much?"
Yeah.
Not that she should physically hurt me. I said, let's do it in slow motion so you can use your energy. And I don't want to get hurt, but let's look into that. Let's feel what that's like. And then she pushed me. She showed me how strong she was. And I said, what would you do if you could live like that strong? She said, I'd definitely go become a fire person. And she did. She went into the military. She became a fire person. She eventually became a emergency medical technician. Yeah. She decided, I'm going to live my own size. I'm not going to shrink myself like the preparation H does physically, psychologically too, right? The military system, the sexist system. Why the hell would they come up with something like that? All the reasons we all know. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another really beautiful example on how different, you know, I'm sure all the women that you've worked with, right? Like it's about understanding what is true for them. Because, right, you haven't given this as an example, but for some women, right, it's like having more weight on is a protection against, I don't want to be objectified. I don't want to be, you know, I don't feel safe in the world for a variety of very important reasons, right? But in this case, right, like with her, so there's no one size fits all is what I'm trying to say. It's what I love about your approach is you're really looking at, you're actually getting curious with each woman. What is this for you? What is this about? And how are these symptoms, like I said at the beginning, expressing what is your body and your psyche trying to express right now? And I do tend to think that when you said before, in my like earlier research, this came up quite a bit, and it's something that's really stuck with me, that the eating disordered body, or the body that, I mean, we could say any body, right, for women, is a site of conformity and resistance at the same time.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautifully. Sorry, I didn't stop you. That was just a gorgeous way of saying it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see that as well. I mean, I'm curious how you might, like, you know, I'm guessing that you've also seen that, right? That it's, you know, there may be, it's like someone's, I see this in a lot of women that I work with. It's like there's a part of them that has internalized the culture, and they're doing what they think is right, how I need to be in order to be loved, or in order to finally be seen, right? But at the same time, like I was just working with a client yesterday who's struggling with an eating disorder, and she actually, this came up. It's like, she was basically like, you know, my parents aren't seeing me, so therefore I don't want to get better, because that means that they will win. That's literally what it is.
Oh, interesting.
Because they keep erasing that this is happening, even though you and I have told them many times. They keep acting like it's not happening.
Yeah.
Right. So if I actually get better, then their view of me, that I just can overcome things and I'm perfect, gets to remain. Right. This is in her case. Yeah.
Yeah. She's fighting the parents, fighting a perfectionism. I don't know her, right? But she's fighting against a gaze that says you have to be this way, you have to be perfect. And some part of her says, screw that, I won't get better. I'll eat. In my examples, I'll eat, or whatever she's gonna, or not eat, or whatever she's gonna do.
In her case, it's not eating, right? It's like, I don't want to, even like this, even like her internal world, I don't want to feel better, because it means that, you know, then I'm in the same system where you are still not seeing me. You're not acknowledging my inner world. You're not acknowledging my subjectivity. You're not acknowledging my particular struggle.
Yeah. One woman said to me, my esteem goes up and down with the numbers on the scale. And she said, and she was in a relationship with a man, married to a man. And she said, he doesn't love me the way I am. And if I lose the weight and he approves of me, I won't feel like that's really loving me either. I can't win. She can, but it can't be within that system. She can't win. Yeah. But I don't want to bypass your statement about safety. I know someone on your Facebook thread about spoke to violence, sexual abuse that girls and women experience. And it's such an important topic. It's not all, but that's not what I'm saying. It's not all women who respond to the sexual violence and abuse by doing something like eating or starving, but
Mm-hmm.
but it's a real percentage, enough where
Mm-hmm.
not only therapists but all of us should be aware that that's a possibility that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Roxane Gay, some people will know her, amazing woman of color that's written a lot on the topic. I think she's at Princeton. She's absolutely brilliant, and she wrote a book called Hunger. She said it was like the hardest book for her to write. It was like an intimate book. And she starts off the book, she says, I'm not going to tell you a weight loss story in the traditional sense. I'm not going to show you a before and after picture. I'm not going to show you she's really large if you've ever seen her, like not like a large. And she says, I'm not going to show you a picture of a pair of pants where both of my legs can now fit in one leg. I'm not going to show you that picture. I'm not going to tell you that before and after story. She says, I'm going to tell you a before and after rape story.
Wow.
And she writes that. It gives me the chills. That's like a powerful thing to everyone hold on to themselves when they hear that. And she tells that story.
Wow.
And it's such a, I say beautiful, but it's painful. Beautiful meaning she does it so beautifully. You know what I mean? It's not like oh, this is lovely. It's an agonizing story, but I call it a love story because she's talking about what her real deep experience is and what's gone on for her, and something that many women will know about. Having this body that gets larger has a protective function for some women, like you said. The male gaze is not looking at me. That's a good thing in that protective sense. And also, one woman I work with said, when we talked about an abuse scene that she revealed to me, I said, what would make you feel safer? And she said, putting on more clothes. There's more detail to how we got there. I said, what would you put on? She said, sweatpants and a sweatshirt. And I said, imagine you put that on. And she said, okay. I said, how do you feel now? She said, still not safe enough. I said, how many of those would you put on? She said, I want to put on at least 3 sweatpants and at least 3 sweatshirts and have a blanket wrapped around me. Now, can you see this? She's wrapping herself in layers because that's what makes her feel safe. And then eating and having a larger body serve that same function. Now think about this, Lori, and I know you'll understand it. If I say to her, you should really lose weight, let's imagine I'm a good guy. I'm not ill-intended. I'm not a nasty, perpetrating, abusive dude. I'm just ignorant. Enough to say that. You should really lose weight. How come you can't do that? To her psyche, to her body, I'm saying, that need for protection you have that's making you bigger, that's not relevant. I'm not trying to say that. I'm not a bad dude, but I'm complicit. I'm not saying to her, whoa, I just learned about the safety. What's your diet program? I don't know what you should do first about food and exercise, but we sure better deal with the safety issue. Otherwise, I bypass that. I bring shame as if I'm telling her story is irrelevant. You have a thought. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I was going to actually say that about, one, it's unintentionally shaming because we haven't really been talking about shame explicitly yet in this conversation. But the other thing is that it again, it erases her subjectivity. That's just what keeps coming up for me in all of these stories. By you actually going with, okay, there is a need here that is being expressed. I want to understand what that need is. You're saying, I want to see you clearly. I want to know what your experience is, not what this, right? The opposite of what we learn, what this exact topic is, right? And what the sort of conditioning is. That what matters is who you are on the surface, what your body looks like, whether you're big or small, whether even things like whether you eat this way or that way, whether you're, whether, all of this stuff that feels to me like it's very much like it's challenging that conditioning that is there, that I actually think that this is part of how sexism operates, which is that women, right, like, are ones we learn, like, what our internal experiences doesn't matter. Men obviously learn that too,
Yes.
but it feels way more prevalent for women, especially in terms of, you know, that there's so much emphasis on body and appearance, right? That's the conditioning. There's so much emphasis on who you are on the outside and how you appear in the world, not
Yes.
who you actually are, not how you actually feel, not what you actually need.
Mm. I love to use the word subjectivity. I love that word. Well, for two reasons. One is a subject is different than an object. An
Yeah.
object means objectification. People talk, if you're treated like an object, then you're being objectified, even by yourself who says I should lose X pounds. If it's, but I love that the subject thing, because how often this woman had lots of different programs of people over years. No one had asked her, what's it like to have a larger body?
Yeah.
Well, it's a terrible thing. I know that. But your subjective experience, not your opinion about it. I know you have an opinion that you've learned, and maybe it has some truth to it. It's unhealthy, etc. But what's it like to have one? What's the experience? Is it an experience? And then she's going to tell me, well, I feel like I got these layers around me. What's it? Can you follow? But I have to actually ask the question. In a way, it's one of the simplest, most fundamental questions,
Yeah.
unshaming questions. And what's it like to eat chocolate when you don't want to? What's it like to be larger? What's it like to put preparation H on yourself and to resist and be upset about that? What's going on inside of you? That's such
Yeah.
a precious thing. Yeah.
And the beauty of it, right, is that it's both, um, you know, obviously as providers or as clinicians, like these are the questions, and as humans, right, this is the question we want to be asking. But and for the person, because of how we're trained, it's very unlikely that any of these women, right, have ever even asked themselves, what is this about? Right? Because there's so much, not only is there so much shame around body, but I feel like we could extend this out to any topic. There's so much shame around, right, so many aspects of our experience that are kept in the shadows, right? Or that that we're not, we learn are kind of unacceptable. And so what I hear you doing again and again with, and I know you don't only do this with this kind of work, but in all of your work, right, is asking, like, what is your, let's get intimate with this experience. Like, again, going back to, there's something intelligent here. There's something that you wouldn't be doing this. You wouldn't be feeling this. You wouldn't be, you know, having this experience if it wasn't meaningful, if it wasn't trying to communicate something. So it just feels to me like, just even in those questions, right, and the question that you just said about like all the questions that you asked, that's revolutionary in and of itself. You're saying, I'm not trying to change you. I'm not trying to make you different. I'm moving outside of, I'm teaching you, I'm showing you what it's like to actually be curious. And that actually everything that you do has intelligence.
I love that. It's the opposite of shame. Shame says
Yep.
something's wrong with you and you should fix it. Even if you're not thinking that way, it's in all of us. I can't sleep at night. What should I do to get myself to sleep? Whatever it is, that's fine. Maybe I should sleep. But the question is, what's happening? What's it like being up at night? What am I doing there? What's so good about it? There's those fundamental questions have this, we're going to figure out what's wrong so we can correct it. And that feeds into the sense of shame. Then people resist that, as we've said, where the question is, in a sense, what's right with you? What's intelligent about you? What's powerful about you? What's beautiful about you? What's spiritually more developed than the human race about you? What's activist about you? All those things are going on inside, like you said, in this location, the site of the body. This is like there's a whole revolutionary struggle going on. It's no less than that. It really is. Only the person is thought that they're screwing up, as opposed to that they're a person standing up for themselves in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. And the shaming, the way that we are trained and taught the shaming view, what strikes me is what I'm thinking as you're talking, right, is that there's like, what ends up happening is that, and this is not only true for women and body and, you know, and whatever, the way we're trained in terms of sexism, but it's true, I think, across the board. What ends up happening is that we're at war with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because we're not actually allowing, like, that's what I hear in these questions. Hey, let's allow the fullness of your experience
Mm.
again and again and again.
Mm.
So yes, there's parts of you, right? And actually there's
Mm.
this part that maybe wants, right? There's this part that would like to lose weight, or there's this part
Mm.
that, thinks, oh, I would be more beautiful if I was thinner, or if I looked this way. So then we can
Yes.
get curious about that. There's information in that. And then there's a part that, I mean, probably inherent in that, we'd find, right, some of what you're finding in what you're sharing.
Yeah.
That there's actually some, oh, well, that's the only way that I've ever felt like I matter, or that's the only way that I felt loved. Oh, whew, okay, you know.
Right. Yeah. Mm. It's incredible what you're saying. Mm. Mm. We're sitting here, I'm noticing I have a sense of like a quiet inside of me. I have lots of ideas and things also, but there's a sort of quiet, it's a night sky right behind the screen.
Mm.
And I just think, I don't know what, tonight I have this sort of sense of a grieving circle or something. Not that people should only cry and shouldn't be also furious and all those good things, but I would say that's part of the grief. But something like how painful the misunderstandings that we've been handed and then used to look at ourselves and then go on for years tormenting ourselves with a change effort that may not have much self-love in it. It may too. People have a lot of methods that really work well. I don't want to deny that. But the amount of pain that's caused,
Mm-hmm.
money, resources, time, energy,
Mm-hmm.
twisting us into, why can't I do this well? I like to use the phrase around the diet industry, with $70 billion industry that doesn't work. I like to say it banks on failure.
Yeah.
You didn't work it. Okay, I'll throw you another one and you'll try it. I'll throw you another one and you'll try it. And we do that. I do that with myself. I'll try this, I'll try that. About whatever the thing is that my insecurities I've been wanting to get rid of for as long as I know, for 40 years, which never went away, whatever it is, from tea to meditation to teachers to therapists. I still have a part of me that doesn't think, how do I get along with that? What does that mean? What kind of person is anxious? What is he like? I still think, how can I be less anxious so I can be really, really good and clear on this Facebook Live with Lori? And I'm not putting that down. That's a sweet creature, but it's still not like, tell me more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, what if it was even the permission? Like, what if it was that's just welcoming that part of your experience, right? Like, I mean, just in what you're talking, you just use yourself as an example. But what happens? This is why I say it's so revolutionary. It feels revolutionary to welcome our experience, to say, you know what, I'm all of, like, you, right? Like, I'm intelligent. I would call you brilliant. Like, sort of psychologically, emotionally, I have a lot of heart. Oh, and I get anxious sometimes. What's that like? To include that in the entirety of my experience, right? And show up exactly as I am. And what happens? The question I had when you were just speaking was, what happens when we don't come from that place of shame and lack and needing to change something? What happens? And I would be curious to hear your response to that, especially in this work that the women that you work with. What happens when we actually validate our experience, honor it, come from a place of self-love, come from a place of acceptance and holding, all the things that the reason that we have these issues in the first place. I mean, they come from the culture, but also our families, the aspects of ourselves that were not acceptable, right? That we had to say, well, this isn't okay. Being anxious isn't okay. Something is wrong with it, or something is unsafe about it, right? Because in a lot of people's families, it would have been unsafe to show certain kinds of emotions. So I just get curious, right? Like I'm saying a lot, but it's like, I get curious difference between coming to ourselves, or even as clinicians coming to this work in a way where we are, right, there's more of a sense of, oh, you don't like this about yourself, so let's try to change it.
Yes.
Let's try, this, which inherently does have some shame and it has a lack of self-acceptance, to what happens if I am like, oh, like I get to, like, we include what I said at the beginning of what I like about your work. We include all of our experience.
Yeah.
We're curious about all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the difference? And even like with the dieting industry, or even with people trying, let's say somebody does want to lose weight, what happens when they actually, when they're met with that, right? What, like even the first story you told, what becomes the goal? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
the goal then isn't, she doesn't care anymore about losing weight, right?
Yeah.
And maybe she loses weight because she's actually working on having a better relationship with her kids, right? Because she
Yeah.
then is able to put up the boundaries there, and so she feels better, and so then she naturally, she's not under as much
Mm-hmm.
stress. She's
That
not
happens.
overeating, right? That's what
Mm-hmm.
I mean. Like that's what it seems
Mm-hmm.
like probably would happen, right?
Yes.
Anyway.
Some of the women ended up changing their body shape and size, yeah, as part of that program. The thing that I think about, Lori, when you're talking, one of the things that humbles me in working with people is the magnitude of the powers that are against people and that are inside them that meet those. Like it's not like a minor war. David, don't tell yourself you shouldn't be insecure. No, I can be. The thing that's against my insecurity is huge. It's massive. It's me as a person. It's me and my family. It's me and my traumas and trying to hold it together. It's me and being a male who should be confident. It's me thinking I should have to be that way. It's me having a Jewish history and having a certain insecurity in cultures. It's massive forces that say you got to get it together and be secure. And it's massive forces that stay insecure anyway. And if I like that woman who's going to eat the chocolate anyway, against all the self-hatred, against 3 generations of women, against how violent she hated herself for not being able to stick to her diet program over decades, she still eats the chocolate. Now that's a heroic act. She's against all that hatred, and it's huge force. There's still something that says, I'm still going to eat the chocolate, like it or not. That story is a huge story, and that power to continue eating the chocolate and say, screw you, I'm going to say no. Now, if that becomes part of her experience, if she says, I can tap into that, she can do a heck of a lot of stuff. If the military can shrink that woman down, and they never could, with all that shame and all that stuff and all that physical things that she's doing, if she can shrink herself into a smaller person, imagine how powerful the force of her bigness really is. If she's in touch with that, whoa, that's an amazing force.
Mm-hmm.
They're epic struggles that we're in. We can't reduce them into some little thing. Oh yeah, you shouldn't, don't say that to yourself. This is like, give me a break. Do you have any idea what that's like?
Wow. I mean, the chocolate story, again, it touches me in the way that you're also speaking to it, because also, what I hear you saying in that, right, is that that is her resistance against all of this sexism and shame and feeling terrible about herself. Like, and if you had not been curious about it and, acted that out, played that out with her,
Yeah.
it would have basically been seen as her weakness. It would have been seen as, oh, she just doesn't have willpower, right? When it's the exact opposite, which is what is so,
She's a monster of power, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what you helped her to do was to begin to say, okay, now I understand what this power is. Okay, where do I actually want to use it? Right? Like, where can I have agency? Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then also allowing her to choose, and her maybe saying, okay, I want to work on this with my children. I don't want to work on this with body right now. Or, you know what? I'm making an empowered choice to not do this with work because I am a single mother, and I need to know that I have this security. I'm actually thinking of myself. I'm thinking of my kids. And instead of seeing that also as, that could be seen as like, oh, she's not willing to stick up for herself. It's like, no, actually the massiveness of that choice that she's choosing, but she's aware of choosing, and that it's actually seen in a positive light versus something that she's oh, you're being dragged down by your boss, or whatever the projection or story could be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Wow. Laurie, this is a great conversation. I notice my little energy is starting to decline a little bit. Although a part of me wants to keep
Oh yeah,
going,
yeah.
but
So we've been going,
yeah.
for a while.
Thank
Is
you
there
so
anything?
much for your great questions and your interest
Yeah,
and your own experience that you're bringing forward, and the way you frame things is gorgeous, and your sense about subjectivity and the resistance and the accommodation, how you express it. Anyway, I love it.
Thank you. I feel like I have learned from reading your
Mm,
book, and also just from this conversation and other conversations, I've learned so much
mm,
about this topic, but also just
mm.
about working with people in general. I think you have
Yeah.
a very, unique, creative approach that is it's
Hmm.
so empowering. Um,
Yeah.
and
Thanks.
yeah, is there anything else you want to share about the book or about this
Mm,
work that you'd like people to
mm.
know? We
The book
conclude.
is called "You Can't Judge a Body by Its Cover," and then the subtitle is 17 Women's Stories of Hunger, Body Shame, and Redemption. And the book, the most of the book are the 17 stories, one per chapter. So you're like inside the therapeutic chamber with us, going through the insights and the questions, so you can use that as a therapist to see the kind of interventions I'm making, or as a person who wants to know more about themselves and their own bodies. Many of the women who read it were like, "Oh, some of these women to me, all of them, or that one is me," or this. So the stories are recognizable. The publication date is December 1. If people want to keep up on about it, they should make a comment, say, "David, here's my email," or personal message me and say, "David, here's my email," because I'll be putting out videos. I write for Psych Today. I'll probably be putting out at least a half a dozen posts for them, and then starting mid-October on the topic, and other kinds of videos. And then the book itself will be on all over, whether Barnes and Noble's, Amazon, and all those other places that you can find. But you can't get it till December 1. I can
Okay.
have it, but I haven't shown it to anybody yet. But soon I'm going to show it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, for those of you who haven't known David before this talk, I highly recommend following him on Facebook. He writes
Mm,
quite a bit on this,
mm,
sometimes on this subject, but also just on, just I feel like you're always expressing in some way what this conversation has been. Like I
mhm,
said at the beginning, sort of how to include all of our
mhm,
experience, how to move through shame and
mhm.
not unintentionally shame ourselves or others.
Yeah,
Also how to really honor, all of our subjective, I'll say it again, our subjective experience,
yeah,
and that's so much of what we are always expressing is coming
mhm,
from
yeah,
that there's something intelligent about it, and let's get curious about it. I feel like a lot of your writings actually reflect this in some way.
yeah.
I highly recommend following David and
Thank
also
you.
getting the book. I think the book will be supportive to everyone, whether you're a clinician, provider, coach, or just a human who
Right.
a
Mhm.
human. Um, and yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really have
Mm,
enjoyed the conversation and
mm,
highly, yeah, I'm inspired, eternally
mm,
inspired by your work,
mm,
by your presence. So
mm.
um, this show happens every week on my personal page usually, and I interview all kinds of different thought leaders, coaches, therapists. And again, if you're interested in, if you're on David's audience and you want to know more about my work, you can follow me
Yeah,
on Facebook. I mostly have a presence on Facebook. I also have an Instagram um, page, and that is Psycho Spiritual Mentor.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, um, that's it. Thanks for tuning in.
yeah. Thanks, Laurie. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and joining us.
Okay, you can you can
Unrecord. How do I do it, Laurie?
you have to there should be a button that says stop live stream if you go to
Stop.